When you've got a situation where the impact is minimal indeed, then what it means is that price point is relatively insulated, and we always factor in that asset being a long-term may go through short to medium-term movement, up and down fluctuation. It's a long-term asset. Things happen. Events like this, global financial crisis, those things occur. But as a long-term asset that's affordable with rates as low as they are and rental yields at say 5%, well, what it shows is that's something that does work. But property isn't the only solution. And so what we need to look at is, in relation to the fact that we've had this pandemic, it's a crisis. We had the global financial crisis, and before that we had other significant events. This will happen again. We need to be better prepared. We need to look at our circumstances and see how can we start saving money? How can we get access to some savings to better prepare ourselves? And so we're not having to be so heavily reliant on government stimulus, and they've done a great job. But the government needs to reprioritise its investments going forward. Manufacturing, production in Australia, they all need to come back to the fore so we aren't so globally reliant. That's for another discussion another time. With relation to ourselves as persons and business. Now, saving money isn't that easy. I've got 5 kids. The cost of living, all those factors, they come into it. But how can we start to identify savings? Well, it's getting across your expenses. An Elk expense economics tool will help you with that. How can I cut those expenses, especially times like this? Because taking control of things in uncertain times is one way to build confidence, to build certainty. You've got a home loan, you've got a higher rate. Deal with it, reduce the rate, fix it, even with your current bank. So get it to a lower rate or look at fixed rates as an example. Then you've got your income. Well, if your income's changed or if your income's unaffected, look at where's that income being spent. So look at those expenses, break them down. Where can I save money? Where can I cut to start maybe pulling back on my lifestyle a bit to still have an Australian lifestyle, one that you deserve and you work hard for, but perhaps some of those discretionaries, can I shave that back and go, well, let's start to build up some savings, where we put that in an offset account, or just get a bit ahead each week, each month on our home loan repayment so we can draw back some money if we ever need to. They're important steps. There's other options, and we can talk about those solutions, and that's where you need to speak with Elk, for example, to go, well, what if we identified in your Elk expense economics where we could save you a certain amount of money each month? Now, what could you do with that? And what could we do to get some high income or higher yield type investments that allow you to build some cash reserves? So there are things that we can talk about as part of some solutions. Now, in relation to the pathway 1, it's almost business as usual, just in a smarter way of doing things. Being aware, but that's just almost a normal market, isn't it? Where there's risks and things that are occurring, and you've got to manage those risks and be smart about it. But that's a long-term plan. And a long-term plan, you've got to expect some pain. It's not going to be smooth sailing like it's been for the last 10 odd years. So pathway 1, business as usual, see moments for what they are, take the steps once you've got things under control and you're confident. And confidence is what's driving this. Consumer confidence is on the back of, obviously, lockdowns. Consumer confidence has dropped, rightly so, because people are being affected directly or in some way, if it's not affecting them on an economical basis completely. So if they haven't lost their job, haven't lost their business, or business isn't closed, then they've had to change the way they do things, change the way they live. And people don't like change. And those changes can hit them. And so that's where consumer confidence drops. And that's why we've seen some of the biggest drops in consumer confidence in the last 40 to 50 years. So where consumer sentiment indexes are dropping, and they've dropped below the lows of the GFC in terms of that confidence. Now, it's a response to the worsening of the coronavirus outbreak, where it moved from a serious concern. And I remember I was overseas when I saw it unfold, and that was something that was isolated to its origin and where it was occurring in that part of the world. And now it's gone to a full-blown pandemic. So you can understand why people have reacted the way they have. Governments have done a superb job locking down, dealing with, so we're ahead of it. And that means that going forward, we're going to have to operate like this and maintain a lifestyle that is now very conscious of the fact that there is a serious virus, disease-causing virus, that has no vaccine, that can harm people, harm our loved ones and ourselves. And the last thing we want to do is bring that home. So we've got to be smart about the way we do things. That means we can't stop. So we've got to expect change and be prepared for it and deal with it in the best way possible and keep going forward. But what does that look like? So what does the road to recovery look like? Well, there's a couple of different views. It could be a V-shaped where it bounces back like the shape of a V, a letter V, or a U-shaped. I think it's certainly not going to be a V. Whilst this weekend, perhaps, when Queensland unlocks its doors, people can get out, you might see a lot of people out, but I don't think they'll be spending money. They'll be glad to be out. Why? Because maybe that situation that's occurred has made them realise we've got to save and lower our spending. So demand-driven spending will stop. It has stopped. It will slow. So that means slower growth going forward. So whilst through this, I think more of a U-shaped or hockey stick, a bit slower, so like a hockey stick shaped, a bit slower, eventually demand will drive growth, but it will be a slower growth. So that's because consumer confidence is down because of the impacts, the very severe impacts that we can experience. What does that mean? So is it time to buy a major item? Perhaps not a personal discretionary type item. Maybe that people be holding off on those big ticket purchases relating to motor vehicles, things that aren't assets that will grow your wealth. Is it time to buy a dwelling? Well, the confidence is down in some respects on that. Sales in real estate has slowed. That's owner-occupied sales. There's certainly inquiries though, because there's always a trade-off. While some people are affected, others aren't. And what we're actually starting to see is there starting to be a class divide where there's people that are affected and people that are unaffected. And the ones that are unaffected in a good financial position are seeing that this is a good time to borrow, a good time to buy. So that is happening. There is inquiry there, certainly, on time to buy a dwelling. And so, again, is it time to buy a dwelling? Well, considering my comments about valuations and getting it in a situation where it's absolutely worth what you're paying for it, and then with low borrowing rates, you can fix that. Absolutely, it's time to buy a dwelling. But confidence is down because people aren't seeing moments for what they are on pathway 1. Or if you're on pathway 2 where you are affected, your confidence is down because you're experiencing it. But we're not all in the same boat. We're not all experiencing the same weather. So those that are affected and experiencing that bad weather, yeah, their confidence is down for the right reasons. They're trying to deal with something and get through something. For those that aren't, is it unfounded anxiety? Given that if you see moments for what they are, then there's an opportunity to continue to get ahead. People that are in a pathway 2 situation, it's about how can you get through that? How can you lock down, fix fix, i.e. deal with your expenses. The government has done a superb job in putting in place strategy and programs to deal with mortgage deferral. So deal with that by deferring your mortgage, getting ahead of it. Communicate with your banks, best thing you can do. When it comes to rent, communicate with your landlord or your property manager about the need to perhaps defer rent. There is that full framework in place to protect you, to ensure that the worst case scenario kind of events that you might be absolutely concerned about can be avoided. And it starts with discussion and requests and going through in fair play to ensure that we can get to a kind of a win-win situation for all that are involved in that situation. So in relation to pathway 1, I think you need to be able to see moments for what they are and be able to take the action needed to save money, to get ahead by acquiring assets, because it's a good time to do that, to continue to take steps to future-proof yourself by preparing, by saving money, by perhaps investing or looking at opportunities to put your money to work for you, those savings that you can generate. And then on pathway 2, if you're in that situation, then that consumer confidence and lack thereof that you're experiencing is based on real situation, that through management you better get through? And how can you then take this time to assist coming out the other side in a better position? So that's something that you really need to look at in terms of opportunity to retrain. The government's offering incentives for education. If that's not something that's reasonable or achievable given your circumstance, then okay, how do you basically bunker down, get the basically everything under control, and then start to go, well, I know that I've got this much and this much is coming in and it's going to get me through to this period. So what can you do when you get to make sure when it gets to that period when perhaps your resources are an end, or any benefits or payments you might receive come to an end? How can you then go forward from there? And I suppose I'd welcome, the best thing I can say is, without knowing any specific circumstances, is contact Elk, that Coach by Elk, where please reach out to us and say, well, how can we help? And how can we put ourselves via empathy in your position and go, well, what can we do? What's your options? And then what's a pathway forward for a person or a business? Because we've got the levers. So my point is, in pathway 2, use the levers that are available to you until they're exhausted, and then from there, assess where you're up to and what the next step is that you need to take. So guys and members, thank you very much for listening. What we've gone through is a summary of what are people missing when it comes to coronavirus and their finances. This is a short-term problem. It's a problem that we don't have a solution. Well, a problem is something you don't have a solution for. We'll have a solution in the form of a vaccine, or a solution in the form of how we operate in person and business worlds. So how do we live and how do we operate an economy with this situation? Even if we don't get a vaccine, we will work out a way. And then it's about just adjusting for that, because we all have a long-term future to plan for and we can't stop. Thank you very much for listening. Cheers.